Ladies and gentlemen, today on the program, 2 age-old questions that have mystified humanity since the dawn of consciousness. Question 1. Is there life after death? I'm not qualified to answer that question, which is why I've brought in today's guest. More about that later. Question 2. The second question that has mystified humanity since the dawn of consciousness. Was the host of the John Huff podcast consuming morphine when he recorded the intro and outro to episode number 13? The answer to that question is no. Look, here's what's going to happen. 6 months from now, maybe 2 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, when my radio voice is honed and my podcast idiom is all slick and tight, we're going to look back on these early episodes and we're all going to laugh at how quaint they are, okay? All of this is an evolution. Watch Private Parts, for crying out loud. Even Howard Stern was lousy in the beginning. It takes time to develop a comfortable radio kind of persona. Now, what I hope is that when I reach that level, what you'll find is just me and my normal personality talking comfortably on the microphone into your ears via podcast. We're not there yet. As I'm talking to you, I've got a microphone going into a recorder. I've got that out coming back into my ears via headphone. And it's really freaking weird. And what you have to do when you're in this position is you've got to imagine an audience listening to you. And that's kind of freaky because there is no audience listening to me directly at this moment. I'm projecting. I'm imagining a future you. And it's really unnerving to do that. It's far easier to have a conversation with a person, one-on-one, in real time. I'm not doing that, but I'm getting better at it. I'm already better at it. Okay? So hopefully there's no impression when you hear this, like I'm on morphine or laudanum or some sort of barbiturate or downer or whatever, or that I'm just tripping out on something. So, the answer to question 2. No, I was not on morphine when I did those recordings. I'm not on morphine now. Question number 1, though, that's a tougher thing. Is there life after death? I don't have a good answer to that question. Fortunately, today's guest, the medium Tania Thomas, does have an answer to that question. Now, I've spent a lot of time with Tania over the past couple of years. We traveled together in a touring show called Visions and Voices, and what happens is the Sarah Smith Trio performs music for the audience to set the mood. Typically, that's Sarah and Ken the Zen on bass guitar and myself on a percussion of some sort. And then when we're done our thing, Tania comes up and does readings for the people in the audience. Now, I've sat at the back of the room, I don't know how many times, and watched this happen. And I am perpetually amazed by the things that Tania seems to know. Now, she's a psychic medium. She has dead people whispering in her ears. I mean, that's how she describes it. And sometimes they're not whispering at all. They're shouting at her. And they're everywhere. They're everywhere she goes. She's telling dead people, stop talking to me. I'm trying to buy a tomato. And you can be a skeptic, and that's perfectly okay. But the stuff that she seems to know is absolutely amazing. And it's so random and so arcane. And the people in the audience, their jaws just hit the floor. It's really incredible. And I've had brushes with this myself. There's an energy around Tania that you really feel if you pay attention. Case in point. One night last year, we were driving through Quebec. And it was way past the middle of the night, probably 2 or 3 in the morning. And we were driving to the next stop on the tour, and rare occasion I was actually driving the Sarah Smith tour van. That almost never happens. I was up front driving. Tania was in the seat beside me because if nobody's in that seat beside me, I'm going to have trouble staying awake at 3 in the morning. So Tania and I are talking, and we got to talking about my family and my ancestors and one of my grandfathers, who I never knew. I didn't know the man. He died when I was 5 or 6 years old. One of my earliest memories, actually, is of seeing him in his coffin. Now, how creepy is that? And that's literally the only memory I have of my grandfather. So Tania and I are talking, and we're talking about him. And I was saying that I thought maybe he had some regrets in his life or something like that. And Tania doesn't even look at me, and she says, I know, I'm talking to him right now. And I just got the chills, man, like just goosebumps popping up all over my arms. And I literally felt a physical chill go over me. And this is every day of Tania's life. And it's really, really cool. And she can tap into people's energy. And she's told us amazing stories about people who are in comas, about people who are gone but not gone. They are sort of having out of near-death experiences or whatever. And she can communicate with these people, and it's absolutely fascinating and completely mind-bending to talk to her about this, to be in the room while she does this for people. It's really, really crazy. So today you're in for a treat because Tania Thomas, psychic medium, is going to tell us all about this gift that she has, how she uses it, some of the really disturbing and kind of heartwarming stuff that she's experienced because of it. And it's a really, really great conversation. Now, doubly interesting and very, very timely is the fact that as you listen to this, provided you're listening to it on release day, I'm somewhere, this is me projecting again, I'm somewhere in Eastern Canada riding in the van with Tania, because Visions and Voices will be on the road by the time I publish this episode. So I'm out there right now with her, and if you're an Eastern Canada person, PEI, New Brunswick, go to my website, john-huff.com, or to sarahsmithmusic.com/events, and you can see where we're going to be, and you can come and meet Tania for yourself. Or, just open yourself up and maybe her energy will come to you. Anyways, enough of me talking. Let's get into this episode and have a conversation with my very good friend Tania Thomas, psychic medium. Roll intro! Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay.
You just want me to keep talking?
I just want you to talk. I want you to tell me all about your day. You saw clients today.
I did see clients today. Yeah, I had a really, really interesting appointment, actually.
Did you? Are you allowed to say anything about that appointment?
I think I can.
All right.
I think I can.
Go on.
I have a granddaughter who always brings her grandmother in.
Okay.
She's been doing it for years now. They always come together, and the granddaughter never really says very much. She just brings grandma along, who wants to connect into everybody on the spirit side. Mm-hmm. And the last time they were here was about a year ago. And the last time that I saw them, the grandma says to me, the granddaughter got up to go to the bathroom. And the grandmother says to me, well, I think this might be the last time that we see each other, right, dear? And she really wasn't very old.
Wow.
And I looked at her for a minute, and as I looked at her, I thought, well, you could possibly be correct. So I said to her, yes, you're probably right. So granddaughter got home, remade the appointment for a week before grandma's birthday as a birthday present. So that was today. A week before her birthday was next week. Mm-hmm. And she walked in on her own. And she walked in and I looked at her and I went, and Grandma? Where's Grandma? Grandma had died 10 days before the appointment.
Wow.
So she was absolutely correct. The last time that she saw me, I just sat there with my mouth open.
This sort of thing happens to you all the time, though, right?
It does, but that was definitely, yeah, because that was the last thing that I remember her saying to me, is I don't think we'll be seeing each other again.
Did she seem peaceful about that?
She did.
Yeah?
She did. She thanked me for spending so much time with her. But like I said, she wasn't that old.
And the granddaughter came anyway.
And the granddaughter came anyway. The granddaughter came. So she'll be coming back again. Made the connection into her grandmother.
I was going to ask, is that what you wanted to do?
Yeah.
What was Grandma saying from the other side?
Just that she was in a happy place, that she could walk again. She could stand up straight. She always had trouble with her back.
Wow.
Right? And she was dancing around all over the place, told everybody not to worry about her. She was fine. But yeah, it was really weird.
This is just your life.
It is my life. Mm-hmm.
That's what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
It's
my life.
Your life is...
My weird life.
Your life is fascinating because you're a conduit to everybody else's life.
Exactly.
You know?
I get to know everybody and all of the relatives.
Whether they're here or not.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And it's mystifying to me.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever connected to somebody who's like super duper famous?
Only if I'm doing it with a family member.
Really? But
yeah,
you've been asked
I can
to
do it. I can do it. We've tried it before. But it comes through better if it's with a family member because it's really intrusive otherwise.
Well, because you could be just dialing up everybody.
Exactly.
Hello, Elvis,
exactly.
It's me again.
And Elvis and, Lisa Marie might not like that. When you think about it, right?
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess. But you have that ability. Theoretically, you could at least attempt to do that.
Theoretically, I could attempt to do that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we've tried it before.
This just blows my mind. This continues to blow my mind.
Well, it's just life for me. It blows everybody else's mind, but not mine.
Well, we're going to talk about that too.
Okay.
So the first question I'm formally going to ask you is the same first question that I ask everybody, which is, when did you start communicating with the dead?
Probably the moment I could breathe.
You think?
Uh-huh.
Tell me, do you remember? Like being a kid?
Being a small child?
Yeah.
I just always remember that I always had friends that nobody else was able to see. Yeah, but I kept it quiet. I kept it to myself.
Is this a thing that is a family thing? Like, do others in your family have this?
Yeah, I would say my mother, but she likes to pretend that she doesn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the moment that I was born, actually, my mother had to be rushed into hospital because she was hemorrhaging.
Really?
Yeah, they almost lost her.
Uh-huh.
And as they got her into the ambulance, she heard my aunt's voice coming up behind her. And my aunt was telling her that it was time for her to come to her.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And she was wearing my aunt's watch at the time. And my aunt had just passed away just a couple of years before that. She was very young. She was only 30. And when my mother heard her voice saying that she was coming, my mother grabbed the watch that she was wearing that was my Aunt Betty's and tore it off of her arm and broke the connection immediately. And obviously survived it.
Why would her aunt do that? Why would your aunt do that?
Because she was always the closest one to her. She was the closest one to her. My mother said that at that point, that when this was happening, she could feel the life draining out of her. She knew that she was dying. So she had to break that connection to stop that from taking place. So inside of the house was me.
Yeah. So if she hadn't broken that connection,
do I think that she may have gone over?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, in that case, is going over a choice you make?
Not really.
No?
No.
So at a certain point, you're powerless to stop it.
You're powerless. At some point, you're powerless to stop it. You can't just make the decision to come back. Let's say you're in a car accident and, it breaks your neck. You can't make the decision to come back at that point. Physically, it's not possible.
Yeah, I see.
So.
Mm-hmm. So you're a little kid. You got friends. Could you actually see them?
I could see them. I could hear them. Oh, yeah. And then, I spent most of my time in my bedroom.
Yeah.
Talking to myself incessantly.
Really?
Well, not to myself, but you know what I'm talking about.
Talking to people.
Talking to people all the time. Yep. I think my parents just thought I was a little bit odd. That's all. Mm-hmm. Or offish. They said I was offish. That was it. Distant.
Offish.
Distant. Offish. Uh-huh.
This didn't seem weird to you? I guess if you always...
Well, no, because it was always there.
It was always that way.
So it's always been normal for me.
Was there a point at which you got a little bit older and you thought, this isn't...
Yeah, when I was 9.
Yeah? Tell me about that.
That was the night that we were living in Dorchester. And I woke up in the middle of the night and was pressured to get up and go over to the bedroom window. So I did. I got out of bed, walked over to the window, and my dog was on the other side of the highway. He was looking back up at me. He was a big collie. And I remember distinctly, because I had the little rubber foot pajamas on, the all-in-ones. I had those on, and I remember distinctly running down these stairs and almost killing myself. Sliding down the stairs. I was going outside to get him in, because we had them in a kennel in the backyard. And when I got into the kitchen, my mother was standing in the kitchen, and I remember her looking at me. And I looked at her, and it never occurred to me. It's like 2:30 in the morning. Why is my mother standing in the kitchen?
Yeah.
And she said to me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I've got to go get Shane. He's going to get run over." And I remember the strangest look on her face when I said it. And it was then that she told me that he had already been hit.
Wow.
My dad was burying him.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you could see him.
And I could see him across the road. And he was my favorite. He was my pet. I rode him around like a pony. He was huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
So it was me and him. And I've never forgiven my sister for that because it was her dog that let him out.
Really?
But the actual death of the dog at that point, it didn't really faze me.
Really?
I just remember saying, okay, and toddled back up to bed.
Well, I know, weird. Well, I mean, he was still alive to you.
Yeah, exactly. And other mediums have actually picked up on him.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. People who knew nothing about him.
He comes to other mediums?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Why?
he comes and he curls up at my feet.
Really?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
Yep. To this day.
That's so weird.
I know.
Who do animals congregate with on the other side?
The ones that they love. So they congregate with you. Your cats will.
So they'll hang out here?
Mm-hmm. They'll hang out here if they stay where they're loved.
I'm trying to imagine the other. Can you actually see the other side, or can you just see the people or the things?
Oh no, you can see the other side. The other side is incredible.
What does it look like?
It's vibrant. So
Yeah?
it's very, very much reminiscent of the world that we live in now.
Yeah.
But take the colors and intensify them by
Really?
about 100%. It's incredible.
Really?
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, and everything shimmers. Shimmers. You ever held a crystal up in front of a window or something?
Sure.
Right? The iridescent crystals that shine all the different colors.
Yeah.
Looks just like that. It's
Wow.
gorgeous. Yeah. Yeah, unless you're not a good person. Then it's not so pretty.
What's it like for not a good person?
Dark.
Really?
Yeah, you have to be a pretty bad person though for that.
Can
you darkness.
Is that like a purgatory, or can you come out of that, or are you there?
You can come out of that, but you have to spend time there, and you have to tap into the energies of those people that you've caused harm to. So you have to feel what you made them feel.
So you have to do like a penance.
Yes. So it can take forever. And people have this strange idea, probably from the Bible,
Huh.
that hell is fire. It's not. It's dark.
Interesting.
It's cold.
Hell is darkness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is an interesting thing. We're just diving deep here. We're going all the way in.
Okay.
Well, why not?
Why not?
Why not? It's been 9 minutes. Let's get
There
to
you
the
go.
deepest metaphysics. Spirits choose to come and be born here? Do we choose to be here?
We choose. We make the decision.
Tell me more about that.
Everything in life is free will.
Right.
So we have the free will to choose whether or not we wish to come, and we have free will to choose if we wish to leave, and that's a real touchy subject for a lot of people.
Oh, man.
Very touchy.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to encourage anybody, to not want to be here in the physical world until their lessons are done.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But a lot of people out there that are not so, in tune with the end of life being a medically induced type of a thing.
Right.
Some people don't like that.
No,
But
I know.
It is our choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's all our choice.
I agree, and
Yep.
it should be.
Of course.
But
Mhm.
this concept of being alive before birth.
Yes.
I mean,
Mm-hmm. And you're alive on the spirit side right now, actually.
whoa.
Yeah, I know.
That's
it's really
even
cool,
that's
right?
even trippier. So it's like
Uh-huh.
quantum physics almost.
Pretty much.
So
Mhm.
there's a me in the
On
spirit world.
side. Yep.
I don't even know what to do with that.
Yep.
What is me doing in the spirit world?
It's intuitively teaching you here. Mm-hmm.
See,
So you're
this
sharing
is
a similar experience, just in two different places. So that's what your intuition is. It's your
weird.
higher self speaking to you.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around. There will be pauses in this episode while I try to put my
Get your head
brain
around
about
it. Yeah.
what I'm hearing here.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is interesting. Is that what consciousness is? Like when you're a person like me who's interested in spirituality
Right.
and looking for guidance and intuition,
Mhm.
it's coming from yourself.
It's coming from yourself.
Tell me more.
It's coming from yourself completely. So people, I always have people say to me, when will I meet my soulmate? And I always giggle. I do. I laugh hysterically. And I do that because your soulmate is actually you. So you do an actual soul split at the time that you come into the physical world.
Whoa.
So the higher aspect of yourself that has memories of every lifetime that you've lived through remains on the spirit side.
Okay.
So when people, I've heard of people having irrational fears.
Yes.
Fears that don't make any sense at all.
I have lots of them. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I'll have people that will come in to see me and say, oh my goodness, I just had to come see you because I feel like I'm going to die when I'm 27 and they're 26.
Right.
And I just kind of have to look at them and it's like, no, you're just tapping into your higher consciousness. You're tapping into your higher self and an experience that you've actually gone through in a different time, in a different space.
That's trippy.
Yeah. And then, of course, they come back when they're 28 and they're fine.
And they're fine, yeah.
Yeah. And the fear is gone.
That's good.
So the fear only lasts for the moment of time that it would have actually been present.
We talked about this sort of thing before.
Mm-hmm.
When I told you about the creepiest vision I had driving down
Mm-hmm.
the highway one day, when I could swear I saw a car go off the road and into the bush.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, and it was so real to me that I actually turned on the radio to hear news reports of this crazy car accident that happened on the highway.
Mm-hmm.
But there were no news reports.
That wasn't there. That wasn't there.
And you suggested to me that this is either an experience I had in a past life or something that I saw in a past life.
Exactly.
And that's rolling around in my head ever since. Because it was visceral. It was so real that I almost pulled over the car. Like, oh man, we have to go help that person.
We have to go and help them.
Nobody else saw it.
No. And in real time, in the time that we're in now, you would have seen it in a vehicle, but it could have been something drastically different at that point.
Really?
So it could have just been that point where you were on the actual highway.
Okay.
The actual landmass or where you were geographically.
Yeah.
And it could have been anything that could have happened at that point. It could have been a sled, for God's sake. Do you know what I mean? But in your mind, because we're in the, 21st century, what are we in?
I think so.
I don't even know what century we're in. That's terrible.
21st.
I think it's 21.
We're 21st. Yeah.
You likened it to being something that would be current. So something that would make sense to you.
Why does that pop up to me then?
What do you mean?
It's like a random thing.
It's like deja vu.
It is, yeah. Mm-hmm. So is there an intent behind those or are they just random flashes that happen?
It's just points in time that are colliding.
Wow.
They're coming together. So when people actually complain about deja vu and that kind of stuff, like you have that sudden flash and it's weird sometimes. It really is. You have to admit it. It's very strange.
That was really scary.
Yeah, when it happens. And it literally is. It's a collision of time. So it's like past time colliding into the now.
I can't even put my brain around it. I just know that happened and it was weird.
Mm-hmm. I think it's cool.
Well, it
was kind of freaky. I know.
It's a cool phenomenon, but a scary thing.
Oh, of course. Because it's so real.
It was real. I watched it happen.
Yeah, because it's so real.
And it didn't happen.
No.
Not then.
No.
So how does a person connect with this higher self?
You connect with your higher self every single day of the week. You're always talking to yourself.
I don't feel as though I am. Mm-hmm. So how does one develop this intuition?
By trusting it.
How do you recognize it?
You have to. So when you make a decision to do something, when something just feels right for you, just follow through with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times people will say to me, well, I thought I was making the right decision, but I didn't. I made the wrong decision. And I just have to kind of shake my head at them because every decision that you make is the right decision because it's ultimately going to get you to where you're supposed to be going. Right? So too many people have been taught to only listen to your intuition if it's going in the good direction. Right? Yeah. Sometimes it's intended to take you in a different direction altogether, but ultimately it gets you to where you're supposed to be. Right? So it comes down to trusting every choice that you make, even if it's not necessarily the right choice, even if some people don't agree with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me. Connecting to the spirits. I don't know how that's supposed to feel maybe, so it's strange for me.
You don't know how trusting yourself is supposed to feel?
Not really.
No?
No.
It's liberating.
I'm sure it is, but I bet you a lot of people don't know how that's supposed to feel.
A lot of people would not agree with it, actually. A lot of people would question it.
Really?
They would question it because I would make choices in my own life that may not necessarily go along with what society thinks is right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, at a certain point in time, you were a nurse.
Exactly. Yep.
You left nursing.
I did.
Which must have seemed a little bit bizarre to some people.
It was very bizarre to some people.
What were the circumstances?
I completely just walked away.
Yeah, well, tell us about that.
The circumstances around it, well, I had come down with panic disorder there. Just kind of slammed me out of left field.
Really?
Completely out of left field. But had gone back to nursing for a short period of time. And I was feeling pressured. I was feeling rushed. and I'd lost my compassion. It was gone. Or I felt it was gone. So I was walking down the hall one day and somebody was calling me to come into the room. Can you come help me? Can you come help me? And I remember distinctly standing in the hallway and saying, I don't have time.
Whoa.
And I kept on going.
Hmm.
And I got to the end of the hallway and I thought, yeah, no, that wasn't cool. That's not me. That's not who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the politics of all of it, the politics of nursing and everything really got to me at that point. And it was all about getting as much done as you could in an 8-hour shift and just forgetting about the human part.
Right.
And I walked out that day.
Never went back.
I never went back.
At that time, were you doing readings for people at that point? Were you, I mean, was there a point where you were,
no,
we're jumping all over the place here, but was there a point where you were disconnected from that side of your life? From the
intuitive side of it. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Oh, God, yeah.
What happened?
Absolutely. I fought it at every turn.
Really?
Fought it at every turn.
How come?
Because I didn't feel that there was anything in my life that I was worthy of having.
Wow.
Yeah. So anything that I felt that I could do.
Cat's in my studio.
I love the cat. Anything that I felt that I could do or anything I felt that I was capable of, I would literally destroy it for myself. I would always make the choice not to follow it.
Why?
First of all, it wasn't normal.
Right.
It wasn't normal. I started going to the London Spiritualist Church at the age of 15. And it had actually opened in 1977, I believe it was. And at the point that I started to go, it was this little place down on Rectory Street. It was called the Odd Fellows Hall. It was like this little church. That's what it was called. It was run by the Freemasons. And so we would meet there every single Sunday, you know. And it was always the same people every week. It was the same congregation. Nobody ever changed. So the mediums would come in and they'd be giving readings to the same people week after week after week.
I see.
And it was just something you didn't discuss with people in public.
Right.
You didn't talk about it, you know? But I would go down there just to get the energy of the space and just kind of connect into what it was that they were doing. But if they would ever come near me to do a reading, I would literally give them the death glare.
Really?
I did not want them getting in. You're not getting in. I didn't want them to know that I could do it.
They probably knew.
I'm pretty sure they did know, but I was not going to give that away to them. And it wasn't me being awkward. It was me being afraid. I didn't want anyone to know that I was capable of doing that. Because that wasn't what life was all about. That wasn't normal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You grow up, you get married, you have kids, you do your nursing. Right? Stay normal.
You don't talk to dead people.
You don't talk to dead people.
Were you still seeing them at that point?
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even more so.
Really?
It's definitely stronger in your youth.
Huh.
It's much stronger in your youth. And then when you start to have children, when you've got babies in the house, it's incredibly strong when you've got babies in the house or little ones.
Why is that? Is that because they're like a portal?
Yeah. Because they're so attracted to that. And there's so much love. And there's love in the home. You've got this new baby at home and you've got this new feeling of love that you've never really experienced before, right? So the spirit side is like, oh yeah, we're going to go there. And you're being woken up all the time. It's ridiculous. Which is why I don't like babysitting. I'm kidding. Keep the grandkids at home.
So you're 15, you're going to the spiritualist church. You're pretending you don't have this ability.
I'm trying to hide it, yeah.
You're walking around your high school seeing dead people?
Pretty much.
Wow.
Pretty much. The first time that I actually saw somebody right at the moment of death was in a school bus accident.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
I was on the school bus.
Really?
And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the looks I got from the people on the bus that
What
day.
did you see?
Her car she'd lost control on black ice. We were going up 73 Highway, I believe it was. And she went straight under the bus. The car went right under the bus.
Yeah.
And when it shot out the other side, I distinctly remember because I was sitting there, I had Nancy Drew book on my lap because I wouldn't speak to people at all. I was completely introverted.
Sure.
And I was reading Nancy Drew. And I remember when I got back up, because he told us to get down. When I sat back up, there was blood all over my book. I remember that distinctly, but it was from the guy behind me. He'd hit his face on the bar.
Oh, no.
And there's me as cool as a cucumber. Brushed the blood off of my pages. Never forget this. I felt a little bit like Silence of the Lambs at that point. Honest to God. I remember thinking, this is weird. What's wrong with me? Right? And then there was a couple of older boys that were running off the bus. They jumped off the front of the bus to go over to the car. And I remember turning my head and looking, and she was standing beside the vehicle.
Wow.
Standing right beside the vehicle. And I remember looking and thinking, don't rush.
Yeah, she's gone.
She's gone.
Yeah.
And I started reading my book again. And I just remember people kind of looking at me, and I think maybe a few of the adults at the school, because they sent us right back to school. There was none of this grief counseling back in those days.
Really?
We had another bus come get us and took us to school.
What?
Mm-hmm. I'm not kidding. Took us to school. Went straight to art class.
Pour out those emotions.
Yep. Get them out. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Very different from
Times have
these
changed.
days. Oh, yes. A lot. They've
Wow.
changed. Yeah. It's just weird. But yeah, I remember people looking at me, and I don't know if the adults thought maybe I was in shock.
Maybe.
But for me, going back and actually realizing the way that I may have looked or behaved at that point must have seemed very strange.
Yeah.
Very strange. But nothing, it didn't faze me. Death didn't faze me at all.
Yeah.
Not in the least.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm.
So were you a loner then in high school? Really?
I wouldn't speak to people.
Really?
Yep. I think I had 2 friends. That was it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I always kept to myself. Always had my eyes down. Would not connect to people.
Why is that? Can you see things in people? Just.
Oh yeah.
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 Or do you sense things about them?
I can sense them. I can. Yep.
What sorts of things can you sense about a person?
Their intentions.
Really?
I can sense intentions unless they can hide them really well.
Mm-hmm.
Sociopaths do that really well, by the way. I can sense illness around people. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I can sense loneliness. That's one of the biggest ones. I can feel loneliness with people. It's incredible. Incredible. But yeah, just about every emotion that somebody could possibly feel. Right down to cruelty. I can pick that up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right down to that.
You feel this or do you see this? Because I know you read auras as well. So
I read auras as well. Yeah, typically I feel it from people. I can feel the energy moving towards me. I've gotten better at that over the years. I try to avoid doing that. And I try to avoid doing it unless I'm in a reading situation because I don't want to judge every person that's walking past me.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah, but I will see auras. And it's really kind of funny because I started seeing purple on people. It was the strangest thing.
What does the purple mean?
And the purple is intuitive. And this is when I started doing the actual work or kind of got pushed into doing the work. I wasn't planning on doing this at all. And I would start noticing purple around certain people. And I would think, what is going on? I ran to the optometrist. He looked at me like I had 3 heads.
Really?
I said to him, I'm seeing purple on things, and there was nothing wrong with my vision. But it was actually trying to pull me towards like-minded people is what it was doing. Trying to get my attention that they think the same way as you. Because I was starting to get into a network or starting to build a group of people that were of the same mind. Right.
Because you had been fairly isolated up to this point. Because this is not a thing that you can turn off.
No. Well, I can turn it off now. I couldn't do it then. I've learned now. It's like, no.
But dead people just keep popping up with you.
Well, they will.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will when I least expect it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one did it in the med room one day. It was hysterically funny. Well, it wasn't funny, but it was funny.
Oh, tell me.
This is before I learned how to get it under control and to stop them. I'm a naturally compassionate person, right? So I always, somebody appeals to me and they sound like they're struggling or they're crying or they're upset. My natural thing is, oh, what's wrong? Can I fix it? Right. And I had this young fella connect to me. And he kept showing me a noose. So I knew that he'd hung himself. I knew that he had died from suicide, but then he kept talking to me, wouldn't leave me alone. Mm-hmm. And whenever I wasn't expecting it, he would come into my ear and he'd be like, I'm so lonely. Could you talk to me? And I'd be like, okay, fine. Because I wasn't home. Mm-hmm. And I was in the med room one day at work. And there was a window in the medication room. And I was in there, and all of a sudden he pulled up behind me. I was pulling up an injection, and he came up in my right ear, and he was crying.
Oh, man.
Crying.
Needy dead people.
Needy. And...
Cat's in my
studio. Cat again. I'll never forget this. It was so funny because it was so natural to me, but I never even thought about the fact that I might have an audience at that point. Didn't even consider it. And I'm pulling up the injection, and I stopped. I stopped and I slammed the injection down. And I turned around and I said, okay, that's it. You know what? I'm done. I'm at work. You can't be doing this to me here. Yeah. This is bullcrap. So you just need to, F off. I literally did.
You can swear on my show, Tanya.
Okay, thank you. And
I encourage it.
I remember at that point, I picked up the needle again. I was going to walk back out and go out to the patient. And as I turned, one of the nurse's aides was standing there and she had her face pressed against the window. She looked absolutely horrified. Yeah. Horrified. Yeah. you know?
Because you're walking around with a needle talking to yourself.
I was yelling, actually. I was angry. You know, I was at work. I was trying to give out medications. I can't be, taking care of this crap right now.
That's right. That's right. Aren't there spirit doctors he can go see?
Well, no, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be awesome? Everybody, when they get to the spirit side, goes on the same level, intellectually speaking. Everybody goes to the same space. So you should already understand. You should already be aware. Right? So it's just a case of just needy. It's just needy. That's all.
Yeah.
That's what the energies you get in your house, like turn on taps or play with your lights. It's neediness. They're just looking for attention.
They actually do that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, they do. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
What do I say? Mm-hmm. I don't even know what to say.
I don't know.
I don't know what to say.
It's not poltergeist stuff, though. That stuff's bunk. Sorry.
Oh, well, you would know more than I do
yeah.
about that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a world where something like that is demons.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's always demons, right?
Demons.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's always demons.
But it isn't demons.
It's not demons at all.
No.
It's just energy that's just changed form. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So I talk to people on the street, right?
Yeah.
They just change form. That's all.
So at what point did you re-embrace this?
I didn't really re-embrace it. I really didn't want to do it.
Really? And yet here you are.
Yeah. Actually, so the funniest thing about this is the re-embracing part, because I was constantly connecting to them all the time.
Yeah.
And I would say things to my husband or to family members, and, that they would happen 5 minutes later, and they'd be like, oh, for the love of God, right?
Right.
But it was actually when I went through the experience out in Lucan, and I ended up in the hospital. Thought I was having a heart attack, and it actually turned out to be panic attacks.
Tell us that story.
I went out to the Donnellys.
Okay, so for members of my audience who are not local, tell them about the Donnellys.
The Black Donnellys of Lucan. So they were an Irish immigrant family that I don't know exactly how long they've been in Lucan, and I don't want to get into the whole story here because the last time I started talking about them, it didn't go well. So,
right.
But the entire family, I think short of 2 of them, were actually murdered. They were all murdered in their farmhouse or around their farmhouse.
Yeah, it's local legend in these parts. It's a huge legend.
Yeah, it is. It is. And me and a couple of nursing friends had gone out, and they decided, because, at that point they knew what I could do. They thought I was weird, but we just kind of talked about it at work. And they had engaged me to go out there and get photographs of them on the Roman line. So off we went. And at that point I was young and I was quite stupid. Well, I was younger, let's put it that way. And probably a little bit disrespectful of the energies that I was working around.
I see.
And I got out on the dirt road. And it was just starting to get a little bit dark. It wasn't really dark yet. It was November the 7th. And I'm on the dirt road. They're walking ahead of me. And there I am. And I'm calling out Joanna Donnelly.
Oh, wow.
Okay, come on, Joanna, show yourself. Let me get a picture. Come on. Just want to take a picture.
Right.
Being all cocky, being stupid.
Right.
And, of course I didn't get any pictures. It didn't work. Everything on that road dies when you try to use it. The battery just goes.
Really?
It's gone. And we all piled back into the car. And then we continued driving, looking for the Donnelly homestead. We were looking for the house.
Right.
We'd never been there.
Right.
And we're driving along. And all of a sudden, I could hear one of the girls, I thought was one of the girls in the front seat, telling the story of the Donnelly massacre. But in complete detail. In full detail. And I remember sitting there, and I was leaning forward in between the 2 seats because I was in the back.
Yeah.
And I remember leaning forward going, oh, this is a really cool story. This is really interesting. And then Carrie, I think it was, she turned around and she looked at me and she said, okay, and what happened next? And it was at that moment that I realized I was the one talking.
Whoa.
That was scary. That freaked me out.
So you were like channeling.
I was channeling.
Eek.
Eek. And then at that point, it felt like the entire bottom of the car just dropped out on me.
Really?
Completely dropped out.
Yeah.
I think the fear of what I realized at that point was so scary.
You could be possessed.
And
in a way.
I don't like that word, but it was weird.
No, but
it was weird.
Somebody had taken over.
They'd taken over. They were using my mouth to tell their story. Because I was listening to it thinking, oh, this is so cool. Not realizing it was my own mouth.
That's crazy.
It was weird. And I'm very glad to say that's never happened again.
Good.
Well, not uncontrolled. And then I just remember I passed out for a moment. Everything blocked out. And then when I came back to, I remember screaming at the girl in the front seat, you have to pull over. I need to get out. Get me out. Get me out. I couldn't breathe. And it was a 2-door car. So I couldn't even open my door to escape.
Right.
And she pulled over to the side of the road and I fell out. And I mean, this sounds like something of, something Anthony Hopkins might star in, honest to God. It's so wild and bizarre.
Yeah.
But she opened the door and I fell out and I landed in the ditch. I fell on my knees in the ditch. And then she got into the ditch beside me. And then I heard her say, "Oh my God."
Oh, man.
And I remember glancing up because I thought, "Oh God, this is it. I'm dying. We're done.
Right.
What's going on?"
Yeah.
And I glanced up and she was pointing. We were right at the Donnelly homestead. We were right in front of it. She stopped the car right there. Right there.
Mm-hmm.
So off we went to the emergency room. Flew into UH in London.
Right.
I went running in there like a crazy person. I flew right through triage. Didn't even wait. I went running in and said, "I'm having a heart attack. I'm dying." I'll never forget the look on that nurse's face.
Really?
Never forget the look on her face.
Yeah.
I wasn't having a heart attack and dying.
Right.
I'd had a major panic episode.
Right.
And I'd never had one in my entire life prior to that. That was the first time.
Scary.
It was scary.
Yeah.
It was scary because it took 2 years for me to actually get control of them.
Really?
And it was in that 2-year time period when I had that, you called it an awakening or something, or a reckoning or something.
Just that you embraced this again, which is maybe not the right terminology.
It might be ultimately, because at that point, going through everything I went through from there on in for the next 2 years, I became agoraphobic. I couldn't even get out of the house.
Really?
I had to, if I went anywhere, my husband or somebody had to take me.
Wow.
And I remember being so angry at that point. I was so mad.
Huh.
And I was really, really mad because the one thing that wasn't present at that point was them.
Really?
So I didn't have that connection to the spirit side. They weren't coming around. They weren't connecting to me at all.
What do you think was blocking that?
I think it was a lesson. I think they were trying to get me to actually trust them, and the only way I could trust them was to not to have that present there in my life anymore.
Interesting.
And to actually create a sense of missing it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Because the real world to me, or whatever you call the real world, didn't feel right. That didn't feel normal to me.
Right.
At all. And then they put in a whole series of different events to get me reconnected to the Spiritualist Church again.
You're right.
Get me reconnected to Bob Mashlin, who was an amazing medium here in London, fantastic, and kind of pull me out of this and force me to kind of face up to the fact that this is who you really are.
Yeah.
And that person that we're leaving behind, that person that struggled for 2 years and, curled up on the couch.
Yeah.
Terrified to even look at people. That's not who you really are. That isn't you.
Yeah.
The person that you are, you're about to embrace. And it took me 2 years to actually get to that point again.
What was your life like in those 2 years?
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Just
I've never been so
housebound?
scared. I've never been so terrified in my entire
Really?
life of anything.
Yeah. Terrified.
Every day to me I felt like I was going to die every single day.
Wow.
Every day. Yeah. But it wasn't depression. It was the weirdest thing in the world.
Oh, man.
Because the doctors kept wanting to put me on antidepressants. I said, I'm not taking antidepressants. I'm not depressed.
Right.
But
Right.
it was a battle with myself at that point. It was a battle against the fear, and it was a battle against my control. So I'd been trying to control it for years and years. And I was an angry person prior to that. I was very angry,
Really?
very negative.
Really?
And unless I was at work, then I loved everybody.
Why is that?
Why did I love them when I was at work? Because
Yeah.
that was part of who I was supposed to be. That's what my intention was in life.
Interesting.
It doesn't matter if I'm feeling terrible. I got to make sure that you're getting as much love as you need. It doesn't matter
Right.
what it's doing to me.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm just that person. I'm a giver, right? There's a lot
Okay.
of people like that out there.
Yeah.
Right? Always put yourself behind.
Right.
And that 2-year time period was my time of actually kind of reconciling and realizing that people were going to fall out of my life. I lost a lot of friends in that time frame.
Did you?
A lot.
Well,
A lot of friends.
you tend to find out who your real friends are when you go through something
Yeah.
like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They just disappeared. They
So
were gone. I think it scared them.
Well, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, in some cases, what do you if you're a friend and you see somebody who's going through
Mhm.
what from your side looks like a complete breakdown?
Exactly. And it did look like a complete breakdown. to
Well, I
people.
suppose it was.
It did.
And what do you say to that person? How do you connect to that person?
Nobody knew how to respond.
Right?
And the weirdest thing at that point is the majority of the people that I knew and that I hung around with were psychiatric staff.
Oh, if anybody should have known.
It's funny though. It really is funny.
Yeah.
I think it's when it's one of their own, they just don't know what to do with it. Because the expectation is that psychiatric staff are strong, right?
Right.
We're strong.
Right. Maybe it scared them.
I think so.
If she can break, we can break.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But they weren't necessarily seeing dead people their whole lives. There's a whole other side of this.
Exactly.
That they don't know.
You know, it's when I stopped seeing the dead people, though, for that time period.
Yeah.
Is when I realized that really was what I enjoyed.
Yeah.
That was what I liked and what I was accustomed to.
That was your reality.
Because I was now seeing a new reality.
Right.
And not liking that reality at all.
Right.
No, I felt empty.
So what did you do?
I got dragged to the spiritualist church by a well-meaning friend who insisted that I go.
Yeah.
Yeah, she dragged me there. She made me go every single Sunday, and I was not going. She would arrive and make me get dressed, literally.
Really?
And drag me there and make me go. And then we decided that I was going to try the meditation circle with a medium called Heather Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that knows Heather Jones or anybody that knew of Heather Jones, she's since passed over. She scared the hell out of me.
Really?
She was one of the scariest mediums I've ever met in my entire life.
How come?
She was just the way she carried herself. She always carried herself with her shoulders back like this. She was very tall,
she was
very
imperious.
statuesque. Jet black hair, jet black eyes, dressed from head to foot in black. She just terrified me. And
cool.
She was a little bit like the, what's her name in that movie? The one about the witch. I can't remember.
Wicked Witch of the North?
No, the other one. Oh, I'll think of it later. Angelina Jolie.
Oh.
She played her. Was it called Wicked?
Maybe.
I think it may have been called Wicked. She was a little bit like that.
So.
Yeah. And she was running the circle. She was running the meditation class. And I went in and I was already intimidated by this woman as it was.
Sure.
It was my first meditation class with her. And the one thing that you never say to somebody with panic disorder is you can't move.
Right.
Never say that to them, ever. So we get there into the circle and we do the whole evening prayer. And then she informs us she's going to shut off the lights. So we're in pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And she then states, I don't care if you're dying. Do not get up and break my circle. And the lights went off. What do you think happened?
I feel like you might have broken her circle.
I didn't.
You didn't. Mm-mm. You had to hold it together.
She scared me that much.
Wow.
She scared me that much. I went into a full-out attack. A bad one. A really bad one. And I remember distinctly feeling my grandmother coming up behind me.
Really?
And she'd been passed over, I think, at that point for about 20 years.
Yeah.
And she leaned over my shoulder and she said, it's okay, breathe.
Wow.
Just breathe.
And you hadn't been seeing dead people or hearing, you hadn't been connecting. That was
the first time.
She was the first one.
She was the first one. Just breathe. Breathe. And I remember thinking, just breathe. You're not going to die. Because for anybody that's been through it, and I haven't had one in a long time, thank God for small mercies. But for anybody that's been through it, they're terrifying.
Oh, it can be horrendous.
You feel like you're going to smother. You actually feel like your heart might stop.
Yeah.
And I remember I sat that entire circle. I think we sat for about 35 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. I'm sure everybody could hear my hands shaking. I shoved them underneath my legs on the chair to try to stop them from shaking. And when they turned the lights back on, I was just a complete mess. I was as white as a sheet, still trembling. And it was weird. It was almost as if she knew. Because when she flipped the lights back on, she got up, she walked over, and she gave me the biggest hug in the world.
She did
and
that.
Thanked me for being there.
She, she knew that you needed to experience that. And
And nobody in that room knew that I'd been going through that.
Wow.
No one.
Maybe.
So I continued going every single week, and every week for, God, it had to be 8 months. I had an attack every week.
Did you?
But I sat it.
Right.
And that's the whole trick to those is sit them. Don't run from them. You have to sit them.
Right.
The running is a control thing, and that's what I've been trying to do my entire life is control it.
Right.
So they were teaching me that I had to release control. That's all that was about. I had to let go of control.
So then what happened?
Then what happened? You just want me to keep going, do you?
This is the journalist's favorite question.
Then
what
happened? And then and you might know Doug Air. Do you know Doug Air?
I think you've maybe mentioned him to me.
Yeah, he's a musician here. I didn't know he was a medium. It was actually kind of
funny.
Really?
I don't know him personally, no.
Yeah, he used to play the O'Briens on Viscount Road.
Okay.
Notre Dame. So I was going to the church, and of course Doug Air started coming to the church, and it was rather funny because we've been going to see Doug's in the band for years, prior to this. And I was like, well, that's weird. What's he doing here? And we kind of got chatty and, sitting together in church every week. And he finally said to me, he said, Bob Mashlin, he was a very well-respected medium here in London for a long, long time. He was the owner of Bob's TV. I don't know if you even know what that is, but a lot of the older listeners will know what that is. And Doug came to me and said that Bob had asked if I would come and sit in the circle with them. And it was a private circle. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, can't do that.
Really?
No, I'm in a comfort zone here. I'm in a comfort zone. Don't move me out of a comfort zone. And I remember I said to Doug, you know what? I'll give it a shot, but you're going to have to come pick me up because I would never have gone ever.
Really?
So he came and picked me up. We went and had a coffee at Timmy's first, try and calm me down, and then took me over to Bob's. And first we went into a very brief meditation. Of course, what happened again in a new environment, right?
Sure. And
then at the end of the meditation, Bob had photographs in an envelope, and it was sealed. And he handed me the photograph. It was one photograph, and he handed it to me. And he said, I just want to see how good I think you really are.
Wow.
And he handed me the photograph in the envelope, so I couldn't see it. And he said, okay, first 3 things that you feel. And I was terrified because I was like, what if I'm going to make a fool of myself here?
Yeah.
Right? And that's why I always say to people, whatever it is that you get, spit it out.
Right.
Throw it out there because it's going to make sense.
Yeah.
And so I held it in between my hands for a minute. And the first thing out was the movie Thelma and Louise. So I said to him, Thelma and Louise, feeling completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then I said, little tiny little dog, looks like a terrier. And then I said, and I'm standing in left field. And none of these 3 things made any sense to me at all. And I remember looking at him going, I'm so sorry. That was just dumb. Right? And he looked back up at me and he had tears welling up in his eyes. I'll never forget it. And he said that none of that was dumb. None of that was dumb. So his wife's name was Thelma. She had passed away just a couple of years prior to that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Their little dog had passed away like 6 months after she did.
Wow.
And he put the dog in with her into the grave. And she was a baseball player. And guess what her position was?
Go on.
Left field. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget it because it was at that moment that I thought, oh, maybe I do have something. Maybe there is something here.
Where does that come from?
How do I even explain that? I just touch something. I get close to something.
Yeah.
And I start getting fed information. And even if it doesn't make any sense to me, I just start saying it.
It just comes into your head.
It out.
I've watched you do this. And
it's just a trust thing.
It's
amazing. Even if it's crazy. I did a home party a few weeks ago. This was hysterically funny. And there was a bunch of women in the room. I was talking to one woman over on one side. And the minute I got connected to her, I said, oh my goodness gracious. I said, I just want to give you a bag of chopsticks for some reason.
Yeah.
A bag of chopsticks. I said, how ridiculous is that? Why would I even want to do that? Right. And the initial assumption would be that she's Asian or Japanese or something. And this is the utensils. Right. And she wasn't. And I said, just a bag of chopsticks. And everybody in that room started to laugh. They all worked with her. Mm-hmm. They were all fellow employees. And they all cracked out laughing. And they said to her, tell her why. Tell her why. It's the cat. And this woman ate everything in her life with chopsticks.
Really?
Her kitchen drawer was only full of chopsticks, including yogurt. She would eat yogurt with chopsticks. Who does that?
How do you even do that?
I have no idea. But the staff that work with her said to me, you should watch it. It's the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your entire life. Yogurt with chopsticks.
I can't even picture how that would happen.
I know.
Right.
Yeah. I keep saying, send me video. I really want to see this. I really want to see this. But it didn't make an ounce of sense to me. No. But it made sense to everybody else in that room.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah. It's weird.
So you connected with Bob, and then you started to connect with the other side again. And then at what point did you transition into actually working as a medium?
Bob started dragging me around the church circuit.
The circuit.
There's a church circuit in southwestern Ontario. There's the Clinton Church. There's one in Hamilton, one in Toronto, one here in London, Burlington. And he kind of decided he was going to pull me under his wing. He was 72 or 74 at the point that I met him, right? And he decided I was going with him. And the very first service that we did together, I'll never forget this because he always made me wear a dress. Oh, it was awful.
I've never seen you in a dress.
And you never will again either. Never. But he always insisted that I look always, mediums had to look well presented at that point, right? And so there I would show up in my dress, and he'd always be in a 3-piece suit without fail.
Right.
You know, he was Belgium, and he was very, very, very driving cap in the whole 9 yards.
I was gonna say, I'm trying to, I'm trying not to picture a stereotypical kind of goth look here, but that's what's coming to mind.
Exactly that. And so the first time that I actually went with him to a service, he made me come and sit up at the front. It was at the London service.
Okay.
So I knew everybody in the room.
Sure.
And he got up and he did his talk, because you always do like a 20-minute talk first. He got up and he did his talk, and then he sat down, and they introduced the reading part, and they said, okay, now we'll get to the readings. And I remember he sat there right beside me and he didn't move. And I remember looking at him and going, Bob,
it's your turn.
It's your turn.
Where you go?
And he looked over at me and he went, I'm tired. I'm not doing it. You have to. And I looked at him. I actually told him to go fuck himself. In the church. I did. And he looked at me and he went, one of us has to get up there. And he was not going to get off that chair.
Man, these
not going to get off that chair.
These medium mentors are tough, man.
Oh, they're tough.
They put the lights on you. Yeah. They force you to get up.
Yeah. They want you to embrace your gift.
They want you to jump in. Yeah.
And I didn't have any choice. I had no choice. Get up. And I gave off 2 readings that day, and I shook through that entire thing.
Did you?
I was petrified. I wasn't a public speaker.
Right.
I didn't like people that much. And I did 2 readings, and both of them were bang on.
Really?
And I sat down, and he just looked at me and went, there you go. And then he just continued to drag me around the province.
Right.
Doing this stuff. And then it was a week before Easter Sunday, 2008. It was a week before Easter Sunday. And we had a church service to do in London.
Yeah.
So there we were. And I was a pretty adept at it. It was more comfortable, but I wasn't doing it without him. He always had to be with me. And we got to the church service, and he asked me for a coffee. So I made him a coffee in the kitchen. I'll never forget this. And I left a stir stick in his coffee.
Yeah.
And he walked out to the podium, and he sat down, and I followed him out and sat beside him in my dress. And this is, I think, when I decided no dresses were never happening again after this episode.
Right.
And I remember he had his coffee and he took the stir stick out. And I remember he looked at me. He just glanced at me. And then he looked around like this, couldn't find anything. So he dropped his stir stick into my purse. And I remember looking at him going,
what a jerk.
What are you doing? And then And then he stood up to start doing his talk. And I think he was no more than 90 seconds into his talk, and he collapsed to the floor, had a massive heart attack.
Oh, wow.
Right in front of me. So I just want you to imagine me. I'm straddling him with a skirt on.
Yeah.
This is, I think, at the point that I thought, no, we're doing pants from now on.
Right.
And he survived for about 7 days after that in the hospital. We managed to get his heart beating again, but he was in intensive care.
Yeah.
And I went in to see him the day before he died. And I remember climbing over all of the equipment. So I'm climbing over the ventilator, everything, tubes for days. And I climbed right over and got right on top, right into his face. And I looked at him and I went, don't you dare die on me, you bastard. Don't you die.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly, he grinned.
Oh, wow.
There was a grin. And I thought, no way. Are you kidding me? And he died the next day. He passed away the next day. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Have you talked to him since?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. I have talked to him since.
Yeah.
Actually, because at that point that he passed, and then, of course, the funeral and all that. And I can distinctly remember people around me. I can hear them behind me saying, is she okay? Is she going to be okay?
Really?
Because I swear to God, I thought my knees were going to come out, because nobody could make me do what I was doing but him. He was the only one that I trusted.
Yeah.
And so I made the decision I was never doing it again.
Oh, wow.
I made that decision. I'm not doing it. I said that to my husband. That's it. Not doing it. Can't do it without him. And I think it was about 7 days after he passed away. I was on the fundraising committee for the Spiritualist Church. We were trying to think of a fundraiser, right? And I was fine with the Spiritualist Church, but not doing the shows or not doing the platform work. And 4 years before that, I put my name in for a reading with Alison Dubois. She's the medium that was, the TV show Medium was based on her.
Okay, right.
And I put my name in for a phone reading 4 years before that, in 2004. And I had been told it would take 2 years for that reading to come up. Well, didn't that reading come up the week he died?
Wow.
So I get an email.
Yeah.
You've come to the top of the list for a reading with Alison Dubois. And I remember looking at it going, okay, no, this timing sucks. This is not happening.
Right.
I'm too angry right now. I was really angry.
Yeah.
And not a good time for a reading if you're angry or really deep in grief.
Sure.
And so I turned it down.
Oh.
I said, no, not right now. It's not a good time. Just put me back at the bottom of the list. It's fine. And went to bed.
Yeah.
Woke up in the middle of the night and opened my eyes. And I've got Bob hanging right over top of my face. Exactly where I was when I got mad at him in the hospital, hanging over top of him.
Right.
And he's hanging right over top of me. And he says, you need to email them back. And I just remember looking at him going, okay, I'm losing my mind here.
Yeah.
No, because he had a baseball cap on. And Bob never wore a baseball cap in his entire life. I'd never seen a baseball cap on his head.
Weird.
So at that point, 4:00 in the morning, I decided that it was me making this up.
Right.
It was me. I was just hopeful.
Right.
And I went back to sleep. I was like, whatever. Went back to sleep. Woke up the next morning, went to get on my computer, the big old elephant computers at that point, right?
Yeah.
Turned on my computer. What was the screensaver?
What was it?
It was Bob. He was sitting there at his coffee table. This was several years before that. He was doing psychometry using photographs and his fingers.
Okay.
In a baseball cap.
Really?
Mm-hmm. In a baseball cap.
Weird.
Yeah, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. You've got to be joking. So I emailed back. And I just followed through on what my gut was telling me. And I emailed back to, I think it was Andrea at the time that was her assistant. And I said to her, would it be possible? Allison's doing a tour. It was her first tour ever. And I said, would she consider coming into Canada?
Right.
Doing a fundraiser for the Spiritualist Church. And I got a response back that she didn't have time in her schedule. Very, very sorry. It didn't take long to get that response. And then I was like, okay, Bob, now what? Like, what would you like me to do now?
Right.
Cocky. I was cocky.
Bitter.
Yeah, usual me. And I think it was 2 days later. It was within 48 hours. I was sitting there and I was in one of my funks. I was in my pajamas. I'm not going anywhere. And the phone rang and it was that long distance call. Remember the long distance ring
I
that you used to get?
Right. Yes. I forgot about that.
Yep. And every time you'd hear it, you'd be like, it's a telemarketer. I'm not answering the phone. Right?
Yeah.
And it's ringing. And Dan went to pick it up, my husband. And I yelled, I went, do not pick up that phone. I don't want to talk to a telemarketer. And he grabbed it anyway.
Yeah.
As he would.
Dan.
And he's on there. And then I heard him say, okay, hang on 1 second. I'll get her.
Uh-oh.
And I wasn't in a good mood that day.
I can tell.
Mm-hmm. And he come walking out with the phone. And I'm going, I don't want to talk. And I'm, doing the cut motion with my fingers. And he went, no, I think you want to take this call. I said, I think I don't want to take this call. And of course, they could hear the whole conversation at the other, right? So he hands me the phone and I just about snapped off their face. I really did. I was like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And, oh, hi, it's Joe Dubois. It was Alison Dubois' husband.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, calling me to tell me that they had cleared time in the schedule to get Allison here in London.
Wow.
So I got real busy real fast for the next 3 months because this was March. She was coming in July.
Right.
And we had to put together a huge event at the Aeolian Hall.
Yeah.
And yeah, Allison came. I got connected to Allison. She's very well known in the States, extremely well known. And and the rest was history. Bob just decided if I'm not there, I'm going to make you do this one way or another.
Right.
And after Allison went home, I got connected to her cousin Mark, and we started to travel together. We started to do work together.
Yeah.
And then Allison threw me up on her website, and the rest is pretty much history.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just weird. Well, it wasn't weird. I mean, it's weird.
I mean, but the synchronicity is so... It's undeniable.
It is undeniable. There was no way I was getting out of this.
It's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wasn't getting out. It's water bottles, sorry.
No, that's fine. As I said on the Sarah McDougall episode of the podcast when we were slurping coffee in her kitchen.
I did listen to that one,
did
too.
You?
Yeah.
I want it to sound like people are sitting in on a chat at the coffee shop, whatever. So by all means, we have a cat eating food in the window.
Yes, we do.
We have you with the water bottle.
Mm-hmm.
So you began to embrace this gift.
I had no choice. What choice did I have?
Wow.
I didn't have a choice.
And
I was scared of the next thing they might pull if I didn't do it. So,
right. They were going to force you into this.
They were going to force me one way or the other.
One way or the other.
Yep. They were going to force me into it.
Does everybody have this ability?
Everybody has the ability. It's just that everybody don't recognize the ability.
Really?
That's all. The ego plays a big part in this.
Yeah.
The ego brain, you know?
Yeah.
And the ego brain starts to get groomed from the time that you're a toddler.
Right.
You know, we have specific markers that we have to meet. Right?
Yeah.
So you're not walking by the age of 1, right? Or, you know, you're only allowed to have, eggs after, I think now they can have eggs quite young, but it used to be you couldn't have eggs after a year. So everybody's kind of tied into specific ways that things are supposed to go.
Right.
Right? And people just kind of tend to learn that way. They just start to follow the rules. And when you follow the rules, it doesn't work.
I mean, our culture is distinctly not in support of intuition.
No.
In that sense.
Not in that sense.
I mean,
no.
It's in fact outright hostile to it. If you grow up in a religious world like I did, this is satanic. Yes. This
Absolutely.
is occultic.
Yep.
They used to burn people for this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was burnt a couple times. Let's know that, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not something that we would grow up nurturing.
No.
Right?
No.
So probably if you had any inkling of this, you stamped it out pretty quick.
Oh yeah, you do stamp it out pretty quick. My family was pretty open. I mean, I was christened Roman Catholic. I was never brought up that way. My father refused,
but they didn't
to allow that.
The holy water didn't singe
set me on
off of
fire.
you or anything like that.
I know. Yeah, people actually do that if I walk into a church. I love churches, actually. I think they're very peaceful. The actual environment's peaceful.
Catholic ones, yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
But I've walked into churches and my, well-meaning hysterical friends will go up to the, whatever it's called there. I can't remember what it's called. And they're throwing water at me.
Oh, witch!
Just to see if I melt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. I don't think there should be a rule book. And I think the Bible's a rule book. And I'm not taking that away from anybody that follows that or follows that belief because it's not my place, right? But I don't think life isn't a rule. That's not intuitive.
Well, funny thing
Rules aren't intuitive.
In terms of Christianity, I mean, there are lots of people, in fact, most of them in that world who claim to be communicating directly with spirit.
Oh, exactly. Oh, I know. Yeah,
right?
Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Right.
Who's that? Hello? Right. Yeah, no.
So, I mean...
But they denounce it if someone such as myself states that we're doing it because the only energies or the only entities that we're permitted to connect to is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Which are actually...
Us. Yes. It's actually us. Well, and that's the one thing that people are missing.
They'll burn us both for saying that on this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, we'll go down together. We're good.
Well, I trust you. I trust you as a guide into that other side of things because through my interactions with you, which has been many, death is not something to be feared.
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all. No. It's just a changing of space. That's all it is. So you're basically in the same space. And you're basically connected to everything that you loved here in the physical world. Yeah. It's just a bigger version of it. It's just a more powerful version of what you know now.
Are spirits following people into the bathroom and that sort of stuff?
Oh, no, they don't do that. No. Unless it was a very, very amorous husband, then they will do that. But, if that was typical here in the physical world, if it was typical to do that, it would be typical for them to do that there. Unless the wife or the husband gets a new girlfriend, then they know there's a boundary. They don't cross that boundary, right?
So it's not like you die and then all of a sudden you know all secrets of the universe?
You don't know all the secrets of the universe? No, that's what living's for.
Whoa. I don't know all the secrets of the universe. I guess I haven't lived.
We got
long
a long
enough.
way to go yet. And it's at that point when we decide we're going to come back and actually get the rest of it. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about spirit guides.
Spirit guides. Everybody has 7 spirit guides.
Who are these 7 spirit guides?
You have master guides. So they're based entirely. Who are they?
Yeah.
They're just more evolved entities. They're more involved spiritual energies. They've been around for thousands and thousands of years. They generally have never had a physical incarnation. They've always been pure spirit. So they've never actually set foot on earth. And a lot of people actually make that mistake. So they believe that spirit guides and guardian angels are the same thing, and they're not. So guardian angels typically have been on the physical earth with us. So it's a grandparent or it's an aunt or an uncle or an older sibling.
Right.
But spirit guides literally kind of, if you want to use God as a frame of reference, spirit guides kind of came in with God, so to say. Let's put it that way. All right. So they were part of that intelligence, right?
Did they choose you?
You choose them. You choose them by what you want to learn.
Okay.
So you actually kind of sort that out before you come into the physical world, what you need to learn
Right.
in this lifetime.
Right.
And your spirit guides are chosen on that premise. It's really kind of funny because very often your master guide, the one that's with you throughout your entire life, your master guide tends to be the complete opposite of who you are.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
The complete opposite. So my master guide comes through as a small child. She's around 5. And she used to always come through to me when I was a young kid or when I was getting older. And she would always be in the middle of a field, and it would always be long grass.
Yeah.
And she'd be in the middle of this long grass. And I was always standing on the outside of it, on the neatly mowed, right? Manicured.
Right.
Okay? The safe spot.
Right.
And she used to stand in the middle and she would call me and she would say, you've got to come in and play. Come in and play. And that was the one issue I always had in life, is I always wanted to be that.
Really?
But I could never break the boundary to do that. I could never get over that. I always felt like I had to present something different. Right? And a lot of that's, upbringings.
Okay.
It's all upbringings, right?
Yeah.
I always had to present something differently than everybody else. So my spirit guide was in direct, contrast to who I was.
Right.
Except for now. I don't care. Now I'll go play in the grass. I don't care. But your master guide is usually in direct contrast to who you are. But they're here to bring the lessons that you needed to learn.
Yeah.
And very often we get here and we don't know what those lessons were when we came in.
That's what I was going to say to you. Like, how do you begin to learn what they are?
You begin to learn what they are through the experiences that you have in life.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will have some very difficult experiences as children.
Sure.
And what they choose to do with those experiences is part of what their lesson is.
But you need a certain amount of self-awareness, do you not?
You have to be self-aware of that. And that's why there's so many people, and people out there now saying, you can't go into your past. Right. You can't use that as a rule book for your behavior going forward. You can't do that. What do you learn in that? You're not learning anything in that. And that's what the intention is of your spirit guides and the experiences that you have. Because some of the experiences, they suck.
Yeah.
They do. They really suck.
Sure.
And, you get to the other side of that going like, well, why? Why would that had to have happened to me?
Yeah.
Why did that have to happen to me? And until you actually look at them and embrace them as being a lesson as opposed to a punishment, then it all starts to come into place and it all starts to make complete sense. Your other 6 guides, they change like grade school teachers.
Oh, really?
Or high school teachers.
Okay.
Right? So whatever experience you're going through in that moment or whatever's happening in your life, you get a different guide for every experience that you're actually going through.
How do those guides involve themselves in your story?
How do they involve themselves in my story?
Or in anybody's story? How do they, what do they do for with you?
They're literally there to guide you in the right direction, even if you don't agree with it.
Really?
Even if you don't agree with it, which is really kind of funny.
How do they communicate?
They communicate predominantly through thought that it's not your own. So they're thoughts that pop into your head that really don't belong to you. And you kind of sit there, you ever done that? And you're like, where did that just come from?
Well, that's happened recently.
Yeah. Right? And it's always where did that thought come from? That point, where did that come from? Or why did I run into that person? That's a complete opposite to who I would like to spend time with.
Yeah.
That's your spirit guides at work, and they're actually lining everything up. They're lining up experiences to get you through the process that you're going through. So I always say to people, when you hear thoughts that don't make sense to you, other than go stab your family to death, not those thoughts, right? That's a different thing altogether.
Spirit guides
don't do that.
They don't implant murderous thoughts? Okay.
No.
That's good to know.
Yeah. But, so spirit guides will suddenly, they'll reference something or a book or something that you should be reading or a field of study that you should be looking at, something that you wouldn't even be interested in.
Yeah.
But you can't seem to shake it loose.
Right.
And then they'll start popping different things up in front of you. So it'll come up on your computer screen and you're like, why do I keep seeing this? Where is this coming from? And those are the guides that come below the master guide. The master guide doesn't have any part in that whatsoever. That's part of your life plan.
Right.
The other 6 are the ones that are always popping things up in front of you. Get your attention. You're not paying attention to this until you do. It's frustrating for them. Trust me. You have no idea.
No,
it's
I don't.
Very frustrating.
I really don't. How does one communicate with those guides?
With the spirit guides?
Yeah.
Meditation.
Okay.
Meditation basically is
Go
the
on.
best way to do it.
Yeah.
You know? So whenever I'm going through a certain experience in my life and it's something that's foreign to me or something that maybe I've been through it before and I just didn't get the lesson last time.
Yeah.
I'll sit very quietly. In my office and I'll pull into that energy and ask for that specific energy. I was asking him to show up with me on a beach. The beach is my favorite place to be.
Really?
Right?
Yeah.
I just like the quiet there. Not this time of year. I don't like the beach with 10,000 people on it. It's not quiet. But I like the sound of the water, right?
Sure.
So I will always just pull up there and I'll have one lawn chair for me and I'll have an empty lawn chair beside me.
Really?
And then I will invite the guide in that's working with me through that process that I'm currently going through. Yeah. And then I just sit there and I just stare out at the water.
Yeah.
And I don't have a preconceived idea of what that person's going to look like when I actually turn my head.
You can actually see your
And
guides.
you can actually see them. You can actually see them. Yep. Yep.
You can.
Don't have a preconceived. Anybody can do it.
I believe anybody can do it, but most of us.
Anybody can do it.
Most of us haven't.
And most people haven't. It's hard to imagine that there's 7 people running around with you all the time. Can you imagine that?
Like a posse.
Exactly. Like a little posse. Little psychic posse trying to drive, we're driving them nuts.
And these are coincidences that you see.
These are the coincidences
they
that come
place
up.
in front of you.
They put them in front of you, or what we consider to be coincidence or serendipity. And we're like,
Right.
I can't believe that just happened. And that's what was happening with me through that whole process.
Right.
They kept throwing things in front of me.
Yeah.
And, they were determined, you are not leaving this path.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I had a dream not long before this all started.
Did you?
Well, it wasn't a dream. I think I was awake. It's one of those dreams. And it was just before all of this came crashing down on me back then.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting up in the bed and I remember looking at the end of the bed and there was a circle in front of me, a circle of figures.
Oh, okay.
And in the middle of a circle was an empty chair.
Yeah.
And there was 4 on this side and there was 3 over here.
Right.
And all of them had hoods down.
Ooh.
Okay. So I knew I could trust them. I felt safe.
Yeah.
But I couldn't see their faces.
Okay.
At all.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly looking at that empty chair thinking, they've come to get me.
Right.
Oh God, here we go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to the posse of witches now. I've done it all. Right? And it scared me. It actually scared me for a moment. I felt safe with them, but it scared me. And there was really nothing. They didn't provide a message. They just sat there with an empty chair. And little did I know at that point that the intention behind that is they were about to kick my butt into gear.
Really?
And I had no idea. No idea. So I tattooed them on my leg, actually. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's weird, right? Yeah.
What's the most amazing thing you've seen? Spiritual or otherwise?
An angel.
Tell me about that.
When my little guy was just an infant, my youngest.
Yeah.
And my youngest really wasn't supposed to be here. That was just like a complete freak of nature right there. He was
Really?
a complete freak of nature. That was just weird from the get-go. So I had gone into the hospital on April the 2nd and had my tubes tied.
Yeah.
And and I hadn't been on birth control for 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah.
I didn't get pregnant. And just as I was going under, my grandmother again. So my grandmother has a lot to do in my life. Eh?
Grandma, yeah.
Yeah, they had just put the mask down over my face, and I heard my grandmother come up behind me and go, "You're pregnant." And the minute I heard that, everything went black.
Really?
Everything was gone. Well, I woke up in the recovery room. What's the first thing I thought?
Right.
The first thing I thought? I was like, "Oh my God. Well, it's too late now."
Right.
Right? And my doctor came in. His name was Dr. Atak. He came in after the surgery to talk to me, and he said everything went really, really well. It all looked good. And typically they do a D&C, which is removal of all the uterine lining.
Sure.
When they do a tubal.
Right.
They just normally do it.
Okay.
And he said to me at that point, he said, so we didn't have to do the D&C. I took a look around with the scope. Everything looked really good, so I just left it.
So you could be pregnant.
I was pregnant.
You were pregnant, yeah. And so you could remain pregnant.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You tell me that's not weird. Yeah. Anyway, so this was the one they told me I would not carry to term. They wanted me to abort him, actually.
Oh, really?
They said I would not carry him all the way through.
Yeah.
And I did. He went to a day over.
Really?
Yeah, I was doing jumping jacks the night before, trying to get the child to move.
Did you know that he was going to survive?
Oh, I knew.
You knew.
I had him named from the minute that I found out I was pregnant. I knew his name immediately. And I knew it was a boy.
Yeah.
There was no way around this. I was not going to listen to anybody else's advice or anything.
Yeah.
And He had just come home from the hospital. He wasn't there that long. I think he was only about 2 weeks old. He was sleeping in my room. You know, you just put the baby up in your room with a crib, right? And I'd fallen asleep. And I woke up because something stirred me. Something got my attention. And I remember waking up and I rolled over to look towards the crib. And the entire side of the crib was illuminated. The whole side of the crib. And I remember sitting there and staring. And my baby's fast asleep in his crib. And standing beside him was this tiny little figure, no bigger than this. Just a tiny little thing.
Like 3 feet?
Like 3 feet tall.
Yeah.
Okay. And all I could see around it was shimmering. It was just like, you ever seen when oil gets poured onto water?
Yeah.
You know how the colors all seem to come together? All I could see were all these colors and they were shimmering. It was absolutely the most beautiful thing I've ever looked at. Of course, at that point, I panicked a little bit because I thought, oh my God, they've come to take him. I thought he was going to die that night.
Yeah.
And I remember going and taking an intake of air. Mm-hmm. And as I did that, it quickly turned and looked towards me. And as it looked towards me, I realized that it didn't have any facial features at all.
Whoa.
Nothing. There was nothing.
Just and like then a blank circle?
It was just a circle of light. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It was like a Christmas ball.
All right.
You know the ones that sparkle? It was just like that.
I'm picturing this and I'm feeling like what I'm picturing is not doing it justice.
Somebody tried to draw it for me. Actually, it's really incredible what they drew. It was really neat. But the minute that it was aware that I was awake and it turned towards me and then it turned to run. And it was at that point that I realized that it didn't have any feet.
Wow.
If there was no feet, I saw no feet on this. And that child, out of all 3 of my kids, he was the oddest one.
Really?
For having the weirdest experiences. The weirdest experiences. He was coming back with past life stuff that just blew my socks off.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So yes.
What was an angel doing there?
It was his guardian angel. It was his guardian angel. And I realized at that point when I saw it, I thought, okay, I'm never going to experience that twice. I'm never going to be able to see that again. Maybe not until the point that I pass over. I'm never going to see that, you know? But I was looking at something that was just radiating pure love. Pure love. I was absolutely flabbergasted.
Everybody has one of these?
Everybody. They're around us all the time. Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever been out walking somewhere and it looks like the air is shimmering in front of you? Have you ever noticed that?
I don't think I have.
Like the air waves a little bit?
The fluttery kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have to watch for it now.
You're going to have to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this fascinates me. I mean,
it fascinates me and I do it.
Well, it should fascinate you because you're actually having the experience of all this. For the rest of us who would like to, I mean, it's happening to you, so of course it's fascinating to you. What do you say to the skeptics?
Be skeptical.
Really?
Yeah. Everybody has free will. I encourage healthy skepticism, to be honest with you. I do. Because if people didn't have a healthy dose of skepticism, imagine what all the, screwballs who are trying to bilk you out of thousands of dollars.
It can be dangerous.
Would be, they'd be raking it in, right? And I mean, they are doing that. There's a lot of them out there that are taking advantage of people. They're taking advantage of people's fears and grief.
Yeah.
And they are taking lots of money from people.
I bet.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So be skeptical. I tell people, question it, research the people that you're going to be connecting to. Don't just assume that they're fine because, you like their eyes. Don't do that. Research them. Look a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the most amazing thing you've seen as an angel, what's the funniest thing that you've intuited during a reading?
The funnious thing?
I mean,
this is great. I got to tell you this story. This was awesome.
Go for it.
Absolutely awesome. I connected into somebody's grandfather. And it was the grandson that was there and the grandson's wife or girlfriend. I can't remember what it was. And I said to them, oh my God, I says, you have a new baby. You have a new baby. And the wife was like, yeah, we do. Just a brand new baby. And I said, and I really hope you named it after the grandpa. And she looked at me and she went, yeah, we did. And I said, well, I should flip and well hope so. Because grandpa took me to the night of his death.
Oh, really?
Took me to the night of his passing.
Right.
And then took me into their bedroom where they were busy conceiving the baby. They knew they knew he was dying. They knew that he was dying, but they had gone into the bedroom of the hotel.
Wow.
To get a quick one off. I kid you not. And there I am. Grandpa's showing me this. Grandpa knew.
Right.
So while they're there and she's getting pregnant They're having sex. Grandpa's dying.
Oh, no.
Grandpa was dying. It was hysterical. It was absolutely hysterical. And I did this in a room full of people.
Oh, man.
I actually said to them, oh, my God, you were having sex while Grandpa was taking his last breaths. And the two of them just went, how the hell did you know that? I'm like, because he just took me there. So Grandpa thought it was hysterically funny.
Good for Grandpa.
Right? I mean, yeah, they're like, we should have been there, but we were stressed, and we thought this is a good way to get rid of stress.
Sure,
because Grandpa's dying, right?
Sure, they thought that. Yes,
yeah,
of
course they thought that, and it was really funny because they conceived a child that night.
Yeah,
they conceived a child that night, but Grandpa thought it was hysterical. But I've seen people run across the floor naked. I mean, run in front of me.
Yeah,
completely naked, like they would do at home. Right?
I know you love the story about the old lady who's
Helen
wasted.
Yeah,
when
Helen.
she comes to you,
Helen. Yeah, you want me to tell that story?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Helen from Prince Edward Island. Everybody loves this story.
That's a good one.
I was doing that show in Elmsdale, PEI, and the whole town showed up that night. There was like 30 people there, and that was everybody in town, and 5 women along the back row. And it'll be kind of funny if some of them actually listen to this because they know I tell this story.
They may.
And the young girl at the end had her hand up for probably 10 or 15 minutes, and I was working around the room, and I finally got to her, and I said to her, "We make a connection." She said yes to Helen, and the minute she said Helen to me, I felt like I drank a 60-pounder of rye straight. I was fried,
So
I'm standing at the front of the room with the microphone, and I'm literally like seeing stars. And when I looked back at the family, they all had their hands over their eyes. They were like, "Oh no!" So I thought, okay, there's a story here. I got to tell this. I got to find out what it is.
Yeah.
So I tapped into Helen and asked her how old she was, and I think it was 92 or 96. I can't remember which one it was. And I said, "Helen, sweetheart, how much morphine did you have? How much morphine they give you?" And she come right up beside me and she says to me, "Oh, honey, they didn't give me morphine. The family baked me biscuits." Well, the entire damn room erupted, absolutely erupted at that point. I looked at these poor women at the back and they were all going for their purses like they were running in case somebody called the RCMP, right?
Yeah.
But it was the funniest thing in the world because Helen, she didn't have a clue there was pot in that biscuit. She didn't know. All she knew is that they made her favorite biscuit. She ate that and she felt really, really good, and then she died, right? So, yeah, it's things like that. It's the stuff people never expect to kind of come falling out of your mouth.
I've seen it happen over and over and over.
It even shocks me some days. I'm
stuff
like, wow.
Stuff that is way too random.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For you to be making it up.
The weirdest stuff.
Yeah.
The oddest stuff. I couldn't make half the stuff up. There's not a chance. I mean, I I'm creative. I'm not that creative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen it in my own eyes. It's really, really astounding.
It's just odd.
So, there may be people out there listening right now who have an inkling that maybe they have an intuitive gift, or would like to develop whatever intuition they have, or even just learn to connect with whatever is beyond us.
Right. Or to themselves.
Or to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you tell them to begin that journey? How do you do it?
I would not read too much.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I'm actually throwing that out there. I'm not a real fan of all the self-help stuff. And the reason I'm not a fan of how to grow your intuition is because you're getting everybody's different opinions on how to do it.
It's a personal thing.
And it's a personal thing. So you can't make it fit. So the way I do it isn't going to fit to somebody else in the way that they do it, right?
I see.
But what I always suggest to people that they do, you can meditate if you want to. You can sit there on the floor cross-legged doing the Om thing. I choose not to do that. But I always tell people to find something that they're passionate about, something that they love to do, and immerse themselves in that. And while they're immersed in that, then they can start to make connections to their higher self.
Interesting.
You have to be doing something you love to be able to connect to it in the first place.
Right?
You have to be enjoying what you're doing. Spiritual churches are a really good resource, but a lot of people aren't comfortable with the whole idea of a church.
Sure.
The spiritualist church here in London is not churchy. It's not churchy. It really isn't.
Right.
There are a couple of churches across Ontario. They are a little bit more Christian-based.
Really?
And
They're Christian-based.
Yes, they are.
So there's like an acceptance in that world?
Yes.
Because they're diametrically, in my experience, diametrically opposed.
I know. Yeah, they're very Christian-based. Yeah, so they'll read from the Bible. They'll read Bible passages, and
really,
to me, it's incomplete. It doesn't fit together for me for some reason, but it works for them.
Okay.
Right? It works for them. I guess, again, personal choice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be comfortable in that environment, in that type of a church. It's just not comfortable for me because I don't subscribe to that thought process.
Right.
But they do tie it together. They do tie together the story of Jesus, which is fine. Because as far as I'm concerned, Jesus was real. Jesus is real.
Mm-hmm.
He was a real human. He was a real mortal.
Yeah.
He wasn't a god.
I'm not sure.
You know? You're not sure that he was real?
I'm not sure if he was real.
I think he was real.
Yeah.
And I think he was just like me. And just like every other intuitive out there.
Oh, interesting.
And he was just misunderstood.
Yeah.
Right?
Huh.
So I do think that there was somebody that was called Jesus, but do I believe he's the son of God? Well, that's ridiculous because aren't we all?
Right.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. There's no logic to that.
I mean, you can look at the Christian story. You can look at similar religious stories that predate it.
Mm-hmm.
There have been a lot of man gods that predated Jesus with very similar stories.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into all that. I don't want to go all Richard Dawkins on you. But if you take this story as myth,
right,
and begin to understand Christ as consciousness and spirituality, then maybe you can begin to marry the two traditions.
Then you can marry them together.
Because they're both talking about tapping into a higher consciousness and developing into that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yes, they are.
So I can see that
they are.
In that sense.
Yeah. And I mean, when it comes right down to it, we've got our 10 commandments, right, which are wonderful. They're great commandments.
Yeah, George Carlin got that list down to like 3.
I'm sure he did.
He did a great job. Did a great job with that.
I always just say to people, just be good to people.
Right.
Just be good to people. That's the whole basis of everything. It's a basis of religion. It's a basis of everything that we believe. Just be good to people.
Right.
It's just that simple, right?
Yeah.
I could just whittled it to 1. I beat George Carlin. Anyway,
I think
make it simple.
As I recall, George Carlin he did his whole bit about how he was just sort of, some of them are kind of redundant. Some of them are the same. He was putting them out, and then he came up with, thou shalt always be faithful to the provider of thy nookie, and thou shalt try really hard not to kill anyone.
There you go.
That was the 2 commandments.
Really hard.
And then he added number 3 was keep thy religion to thyself.
Exactly. I agree with him.
I tend to agree with him as well.
Yeah.
But you're right. But I think there's something happening in the world.
There's a shift.
There's a shift happening. I spoke to an episode 4 or 5, maybe 5, with Bethany Butzer, she's a psychology professor, but who is beginning to do research in metaphysics.
Right.
And there seems to be a consciousness shift happening.
There is. Oh, yes.
So that's exciting. And I think more people are becoming interested in a different kind of worldview that's bigger. It's beyond.
Yeah. I was at my niece's wedding last weekend or the weekend before. And it really stood out to me there. The shift.
Yeah.
The younger generation. It's incredible in the younger generation. And people are always so great about the younger generation, for God's sake, blah, 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 blah. This, that, and the other. But we were at the wedding and everybody was up dancing. And there were circles of boys, guys. Circles of guys. And they're all up there dancing together. You never would have seen that 30 years ago. You would not have seen that connection. That would not have been there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there they were, and they were having a great time. And it didn't matter what anybody thought. Did not matter what anybody thought of that. Nobody was saying to them, the boys don't dance together. What's wrong with you? That's not the thing that guys do. Right? So we're all kind of melding kind of into each other. It's almost becoming... This is going to get right out there. We're almost becoming like angels. And angels are androgynous, so they don't have a sex.
Right.
They don't have a sex.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you choose that your dance partner happens to be the same sex, even if you don't have to be gay, you don't have to be straight, doesn't matter.
Right.
Right? You're just comfortable with each other. You're comfortable within each other's energy.
Right.
And that's one of the things that really stood out to me when I was at the wedding. I thought, look at that. There's a shift right there.
Yeah.
There's a shift right there. You're just doing what it is that makes you happy.
Right. And people are becoming much more open.
Yeah.
But there's a whole conversation beginning to happen around energy, around consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting.
Yeah. It's very exciting.
I'm very, very interested in it.
I can't wait till the scientific stuff comes out.
But that is happening.
I know.
It really is.
I know. Mm-hmm.
And
science can't prove it away anymore.
Yeah.
They can't prove it away anymore.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
So it'll be interesting to see where all this goes.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I can't wait to. I want to connect to Stephen Hawking.
Let's just do that right now.
I don't think that's going to happen.
We can't do that?
But yeah, I've always wanted to do that, right? I'm like, please, one of his family get connected to me because I really want to see what he says now.
If there's a member of Stephen Hawking's family listening to this show,
get in touch with me.
Contact Tanya, and you can do it together. That makes it okay.
I would love to get his thoughts. I would like to get his thoughts on what he believes now.
Now that he's on the other side.
On the other side, because prior to going over, he believed that was not going to occur. That existence wasn't there.
Right.
Even though he was a very forward thinker, right?
Sure.
Very forward thinker.
Yeah.
So I would love to actually. Yeah, I've read a lot of his stuff prior to him dying, and I'm like, wow.
What's he saying now?
You.
Well, also, if there's a member of George Carlin's family who can come back,
we can do that too.
We would love to know what George is thinking
exactly.
right now.
Maybe John Lennon. What do you
think?
Yeah.
You know,
we go for Elvis while we're at it.
Family members of famous people, please contact Tanya because we have a lot of folks we want to talk to.
Exactly.
I normally end the show with 3 questions.
Okay.
I'm not going to do that today.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
I'm not, unless you really want to answer them.
I overtalked you. No, I'm kidding.
No, you haven't overtalked me. But
no.
I feel like you've given us a lot.
Good.
You know?
Okay.
And maybe we don't need to go into the other stuff here right now.
Fun. Yeah.
Unless you have one parting message for the audience today.
We were talking about the intuitive muscles and working on the intuitive muscles. And I always say to people, first thing you do in the morning when you get up, people just jump out of bed and run to the bathroom, right? Try not to do that. Have a piece of paper and a pen beside you.
Pick up their phone.
Don't pick up your phone. Yeah. I just want you to sit there or lay there for just 1 second. Get the first 3 thoughts that pop into your head. The first 3 things.
Cool.
Write them down.
I will do that.
Write them down. Leave it there until you go to bed that night.
Yeah.
Okay? And because you wrote down the first 3 things that popped in, they could be completely random, ridiculous. It could be green peppers, for God's sake. You don't know why it popped in.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, you'll see that the 3 words actually incorporated into the way that your day actually went.
That's very cool.
Which is really cool. And it's a real good lesson in trusting yourself.
Yeah. It seems like it's really a lot about trusting things.
It's all trust.
Yeah. I've never been good at that.
Yeah, I'm lousy at trust.
Yeah,
I've always been lousy at trust.
You have so much more evidence than I do.
Oh, yeah, I'm learning as I go.
Yeah,
we're all learning as we go.
Aren't we all? Mm-hmm. All right, and you're still doing private readings. You're still doing group sessions. I'm going with you to the East Coast very soon.
Yes, you are.
So you're still out there and doing accessible.
And accessible, right. For the most part.
For the most part.
Yeah.
I'll point people in your direction.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Alrighty.
All right. Hopefully
Thanks for having me, John.
We'll have you on again, I hope.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, wonderful.
We could do readings with, George Carlin.
We could do that.
I know.
We could set up a thing where we do...
putting that out there.
Yeah, that is absolutely possible. We'll record live readings. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, John.
Thank you once again, gentle listener, for taking in today's show. Thank you as well to Tanya for being such a mind-blowing guest. If you want to know more about Tanya and the rest of my guests, go to www.john-huff.com. That's JOHN-HUFF.com. You can also find the show on Facebook at The John Huff Podcast. As ever, if you're an Apple Podcasts person, please do me a big favor and leave a rating and review of the show, preferably a positive one. It really does help me, and I thank you in advance. That's all for this week, but I'll be back very, very soon. Until then, keep your wits about you, and remember, good things happen when you put yourself out there. Bye for now. When I lived in southern Japan, it was so hot that I swore I would never complain about the Canadian winter again. It's beginning to feel a little bit like that out there these days. But you know what? I'm still going to complain about the Canadian winter because it sucks.